Could it be that the Lone Ranger is finally in town? Raj Doraisamy and Debbie Ferris of Defend Our Union interview Loy Brunson.
So we are so appreciative and would love for you to kind of just share with us whatever you'd like to share. If you could please maybe, whatever you'd like to say, the thing that would be important for us, I think, to know is helping us see how what you're doing could, if this actually gets picked up, and I think none of us know if it will, but what we could do to help create the ecosystem that everyone knows that if the justices pick up what you're picking up, you're providing, we can manage this as Americans in an orderly fashion. And I think everyone needs to know that we as Americans can be adults and we can support what you're doing in an orderly fashion. So that's one idea, but the floor is yours, Loy. I so appreciate you jumping on. Thank you, Loy.
Great. What an honor to be here. Thanks for inviting me. It's really amazing that we've been able to get to this point. It's been a lot of work, a lot of miracles. First of all, we're not even supposed to be in this court, according to what the government wants us to do. You know, Amy Coney Barrett, she was asked to just share some information about the Constitution when she was in a Senate hearing before she was, you know, confirmed as a Supreme Court justice. And she was asked by one of the senators to tell everyone what the 5 protections were that the First Amendment, you know, the rights were that the First Amendment protected. And she remembered assembly and religion and speech and the press, but she couldn't remember the petition for redress of grievances. Mm-hmm. If we had gone to lawyers to do this, we wouldn't have ever gotten into the federal court, let alone to the Supreme Court. They would have told us that first of all, it was completely hopeless, and that we would have to get permission from the sergeant in arms. We would have to get a waiver, and we would have to go to a special claims court because this is a civil action. We're asking for damages, personal damages, representing all of we the people. And it had to be about me. It couldn't be about we the people. So in the first phase of this, the federal court assigned a magistrate judge, I think because we're pro se. And I'm a plaintiff in the first case.
And for the folks that don't know what that
Sure.
means, what is pro se? What's plaintiff?
It means you're representing yourself. You're representing yourself without counsel, without an attorney. And the reason we were able to do this is because my brother Darren had already been suing banks by himself without representation. He had some properties that the value was hurt, as many were, because of the subprime mortgage bundling and all that fiasco. So he decided to sue the banks, and he studied like crazy. He found a course, and the course was follow the rules better than the attorneys follow the rules. Go for it like you're going to appeal it. The appellate court is much more strict, and appellate attorneys are much more detailed than the other attorneys leading up to an appeal. So we were prepared from the get-go, right at the beginning, to lose in the lower court so that we could get it to the U.S. Supreme Court, because when you lose in a lower court, you can appeal it. And so my case got stopped dead in its tracks. We couldn't even file my case. And so what we did is we appealed to the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals. It's called a writ of mandamus, where we're complaining. It's like the complaint department for the federal court. So we were complaining at the 10th Circuit Court with a petition for writ of mandamus to get the 10th Circuit Court to get the federal court to allow me to even file my case. Well, that didn't help. They said, no, you're going to file it. It's just going to take time. But that wasn't true. They were blocking it. So we sued 2 federal courts. We took the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals and the federal court to state court. And after we went through that for a while, the federal court not only allowed me to file my case, but they filed it for me. And they ordered the clerk of the court to issue 388 summonses. And so that we could issue summonses and complaints to 388 defendants, including a sitting president, Joe Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, and 385 members of Congress that refused to even allow a 10-day investigation into claims of fraud and crimes, and all they were asking for was an investigation. I don't see a picture. Am I still on?
Yes, you're still on.
Okay.
I can still hear you and I can still see
Okay.
you.
So meanwhile, while that was happening, my brother Roland, who was brilliant, he decided that it would be a good idea to have two cases, and that one of them would reach the Supreme Court first. So he filed his case, and his is the one that made it to the U.S. Supreme Court. He started in the state court. It moved to the federal court. The U.S. attorneys moved it to federal court, and we were fine with that. It's like, just dismiss it. We'll fight, and hoping that we can win, but we fought it and lost. So it went to the 10th Circuit, and they sat on it. They wouldn't do anything, and we thought, they know, they've seen what we're doing. They know we're going to take this to the Supreme Court. So we were thinking they don't want us to do that. So they're just sitting on it. And so we thought we were dead. We thought we were done. We thought that there was nothing we could do. So my brother Roland, sorry, I got to get it together. I'm sorry. This is just so cool. I'm so happy. That's why I'm emotional. I'm so happy with what you're doing. So my brother Roland decided, hey, I want to do one too. I think we should have two going. And so that's what happened, getting up to the 10th Circuit.
Wow.
So we're at the 10th Circuit and it's blocked. So I know where I'm in the story now. So my brother Darren is telling us there's no use, we can't go beyond this. And so my brother Roland put some pressure on him, and I put some pressure on him to try to find a way to go around the 10th Circuit. So Darren called me on the phone. He says, I found it. I found the Supreme Court Rule 11 that allows us to bypass the 10th Circuit Court. So we need to prepare the petitions, and they need to be perfect bound, and they need to be just formatted perfectly. And we'll get it off to them. And on the cover, we had to put this court's Rule 11. So it was a special Supreme Court Rule 11 petition for writ of certiorari. So we sent it off, hoping with a prayer that they would accept it. So what is incredible about this, one of the incredible things about this is they called us on the phone. The clerk of the court is Scott Sessions Harris, and he
I as I'm talking, you're sharing this with me, and I'm just struck. My phone is ringing off the hook. People are saying, "Hey, how do I get this meeting? How do I get this meeting?" And none of this, and everything you're sharing is all public record, right? None of this stuff is going to negatively impact.
Well, some of the phone conversations are not public record. This is okay to talk about, but so you would just have to believe him.
I think. Sorry, Raj, can you repeat what you just said, please? This is Shuna. Thank you to see you here.
Yeah, you're welcome, Shuna. I just mentioned that first, all of what Loy is sharing is public record. And although Loy is in the middle of this case, and he has there are conversations, things that he is having that he cannot share, everything he's sharing right now can be shared without any negative impact on the case.
Yeah, exactly. This is absolutely. You can go to supremecourt.gov and you can look at the docket. You can go to the federal court dockets. If you know an attorney that has PACER, they can look at everything. But if you go to 7discoveries.com, you can actually download the original complaint, my complaint and Rollins' complaint, which is identical. Now, the complaint is the foundation for the petition that we sent to the Supreme Court. And we also have exact replicas of the petition that the Supreme Court justices have. If people want to make a $30 donation, we can mail those petitions to them. It has the stamps of the court on it. It's an exact replica. So the Supreme Court calls us and tells us they decided to accept our Rule 11 petition, which is basically them saying they're accepting it as a national emergency, and we didn't need the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals decision. So, but they asked us if we could insert more information, more from the docket. They wanted us to insert some pleadings, which means they wanted us to basically insert the U.S. Attorney's motion to dismiss. And we also included the opposition to their motion to dismiss. There's a reason for that I could explain later. We found out later, we kind of connected the dots, which was a very good move to make this move quicker. Okay, so we get that all ready to go. And just 2 days before we were ready to send that to the Supreme Court as they wanted it. And by the way, they also asked us how soon they could get it. They wanted us to get it to them in a hurry. And so about 2 days before we were able to send it, the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals that hadn't made a decision. So we thought, well, now maybe we don't need the Rule 11, or maybe we could just leave it in. So we called the court again, the clerk of the court again, and the case analyst that's been assigned to us, she says, no, take it out. You don't need it now. Just get it to us. Make sure you put in what we asked for. And how soon can you get it to us? And my brother says it's going to take about 2 weeks because we have to print it and bind it. And the case analyst says, we would like it to get here sooner. We would like to receive it sooner. Can you get it to us quicker than 2 weeks? And my brother says, we'll try. We'll do the best we can. So he worked with the printers and the binders, and they were super helpful. And we were able to get it mailed to them a week early. So we mailed it on Thursday, the October 20th, overnight mail. They received it on Friday, the 21st of October, and they docketed it on Monday. It was on the docket for everyone to see. You could go to supremecourt.gov and you can look at the docket now and see that it's docketed and scheduled for conference January 6th. It's right there for public viewing. I just want to say, if you go to supremecourt.gov, go to the second search box. This first search box is a general search box. You need to go down to another search box and type in 22-380, and the petition will come right up. So here we are. They got it and they've docketed it, and then they noticed that they've notified the U.S. attorneys that they have till November 23rd to fight it before conference, with one opportunity to file an opposition to this petition. So the clock is ticking, and they have a deadline of the 23rd, which is the day before Thanksgiving, a Wednesday. So all these days go by, nothing happens. So all of a sudden we notice, check the docket on Wednesday, the 23rd, and we see that the U.S. attorneys are no longer representing the defendants, and that they have a new attorney representing them, and it's the United States Solicitor General. I think her name is Prelogger, Elizabeth Prelogger. And so she is representing them. And also what she does is making this appearance as the new counsel, she signs and files a waiver, waiving her defendant's rights to oppose this petition before it goes into conference. They can't go to conference until the opposition is filed, or an extension is filed by the Solicitor General, or they waive it. Well, she waived it, and we were blown away. That was exactly what we wanted her to do, or them to do. And so they waive it, and then a few days later, the docket reflects January 6th as the date for conference. Now, conference is where the 9 justices go into a meeting by themselves in a private room. No one else is allowed in. No one representing either side of this case. No one from our side, no one from the defendant's side. And they review the case and they take a vote. So the 9 justices vote, and if it takes 6 of the justices to stop it, 6 justices have to vote against it to stop it. If we get 4 out of the 9, and it's 5 against us and 4 for us, we move forward with this. But because of the positive response we've already seen and the nature of this case, since this is not about the election, really per se, it's not about the outcome of the election, it's not favoring either party, it's simply a petition and a lawsuit to fix a major national security breach, in that 380 some odd members of Congress refused a simple 10-day investigation when 100 credible witnesses, namely members of Congress, petitioned the others to stop for 10 days to investigate the evidence of crimes having to do with the election, were investigated so that they could determine that the elector votes were not affected by this. They needed to investigate. And those that refused to agree to an investigation are the defendants. And we feel they should be removed from office. And that's what the power that the Supreme Court has right now. They literally have the power to remove 385 members of Congress, a sitting president and vice president. Not only remove them immediately, but they have the power to bar them from holding public office the rest of their lives. That's the power this case has. I received a phone call earlier today from a former U.S. congressman, and he saw the case, saw about it this morning, and he had actually worked with the Chief Justice when he was a young attorney for 6 months, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. And he told me that there's nothing been this powerful presented to the Supreme Court in the history of this country that he knows of, and that the power that we've been given them is absolutely phenomenal, and that the maneuvering that we were able to do, and it was divine intervention. There's no way 3 trumpet playing brothers that don't have law degrees could have done this. It was one miracle after another that we were able to maneuver right into the United States Supreme Court. And so what he wants to do is what you're doing. He believes he can get members of sitting Congress, at least 30 to start, to sign an amicus brief. What you're doing, it's a friend of the court or friends of the court petitioning or asking the Supreme Court to do their duty, to uphold their oath of office and let this move forward. Because this case, what it does is it strips immunity that violates Article 6 of the Constitution that requires all of our federal, state, and local officials to be bound by oath. The immunity they've given themselves is a strict violation of Article 6, requiring they be bound by oath. You know, the words are shall be bound by oath. Look it up in their oath. And so the effect that this would have would be unbelievable. My brothers and I produced a documentary in 2010. It was called The Oath of Office, the Thread by Which the Constitution Hangs. So we've been working on stuff related to this for quite a while. And we interviewed who is now a sitting U.S. Senator. He won the election. And I asked him on camera what the penalty was for breaking the oath of office. And he replied, "You lose the election." What a sad commentary on the oath. It's like you lose the election. You mean the oath is not binding, in other words. I was just dumbfounded. I thought he was going to give a better answer. At least he should have said, well, we're not bound. If he had given an honest answer, he says, we're not bound. We don't feel like we're bound because we have immunity. Look at U.S. Code Title 28. So that's in my book. Because of that experience and others, I wrote a book. You can see a picture of it in the back that's available at the website. It's 7 discoveries in the Constitution. It's how and why promoting socialism is a felony, and it's other things in the Constitution. And so there are clauses in the Constitution that have been completely ignored and not characterized properly, and those clauses are in there. And some of these clauses and points are in this lawsuit, and that's part of the meat in this lawsuit, challenging their immunity and bringing other causes of action against them. So that's kind of it in a big nutshell. Do you have any questions or?
There's there's a bunch of questions. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask Debbie to kind of look through the questions, and then I'm going to unmute Debbie, and then she'll just interrupt us with a question that she can curate for us.
Sure.
I'm going to ask her to unmute. There we go. So she'll be able to speak, I believe. And while we do, and whenever you're ready, Debbie, just wave your hand and you can volley the first question. I'll get the question started, and that is, if, and again, all this is an if, this is at the sole discretion of the justices, and obviously we're not able to influence that in any way, as it should be, separation of powers as
what you're doing is very legal and encouraged, and it shows support. We're showing support. It's friends of the court. We're friends of the court. We're not enemies of the court. Go on. Sorry.
Oh, great perspective. So one question is, if the Supreme Court does move forward and they arrive at whatever verdict they arrive at that point, in order for any of these outcomes that are in your documents that you are seeking, actions against these defendants, those actions aren't really enforced by the court. So they would then have to rely on some other agency. Would they then be would us, the country, then be relying on the Congress and the Senate to actually execute that? How does it get executed?
No, the way it works, and actually they've, in my case, the federal court ordered the U.S. Marshal Service to serve my summons and complaints. So this is what I perceive happening based on that experience, is the Supreme Court would issue a decision, a judgment, and an order. And let me just mention that because this has already been characterized as a Rule 11 national emergency, the federal court, the United States Supreme Court, can completely judge the whole complaint. They don't have to just uphold a decision or reverse a decision. They have the full power to order a circuit court or provide a court order to the U.S. Marshal Service. So basically, the U.S. Marshal Service has the power with a court order to go to the Sergeant in Arms of the Congress and with a list of members of Congress to have their credentials canceled. It could be that simple. And then if you have 385 members of Congress that are no longer members of Congress, then you have a tremendous positive support. This is kind of a humorous way to say it, maybe, a tremendous support of those that want to take their places. So I think it could be a very smooth transition. I'm guessing that the new president would probably be the majority of the House, which would be the speaker, whoever it might be at the time after this is initiated, after those are removed. And with the power of the new president, the Federal Communications Commission has 3 directors. They're presidentially appointed. There could be special operations, special teams, broadcasting teams that are military that could go in peacefully into these broadcast stations and actually temporarily take over, and so that the news media would be reporting the news as it really is in real time. And so people react from the news. And so I think it could actually be a pretty smooth transition. Am I still on?
Yes, you're still on. So
Okay.
Thank you for that question. I'm going to turn to ask Debbie to share the first question. Debbie, you're up.
Okay, the first question that I have from the audience, Loy, is what is the best outcome for this lawsuit and what are you asking as remedy?
I think the best outcome for this is what I just mentioned, a smooth transition, removing those members of Congress that didn't do their job. They take an oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies. And when there's evidence of crimes committed by possible enemies and they don't even take a 10-day investigation, they're no longer fit for service. They need to be removed, and we need to have members of Congress who would defend the Constitution and investigate evidences of crimes, and just to see whether there's crimes or not, to see if there was a breach or not. But they were a national security breach, so that would be one, and then they would have new elections. So that would be the most incredible part of this whole thing. And then another thing is, like I mentioned, Article 6 of the Constitution requires a binding oath. Well, they've given themselves immunity, so immunity statutes would be stricken from the law books, federal, state, and local. If the locals or states don't do it, lawsuits could come forward forcing them to do it based on the legal authority, which is the legal authority would be the Supreme Court's decision sets the precedence here. Whenever you have a case and you can quote a Supreme Court decision, that's the most powerful bit of information you can put in a complaint. So it would get rid of immunity.
The more I listen to Loy, the more I'm hearing the possibility for something that far surpasses anything we could have imagined or even asked for. This could, if it moves forward, set a full positive precedent, just as you heard from Loy. Now, as you're listening to this, my friends, the most important thing, and I'm going to ask Loy to comment on this, it is easy for us to sit here looking at what Loy and his brothers are doing and wish them well and support them and write the letters just like Dee has asked, just like Debbie has asked, just like Clyde has. It's easy for us to do that. What I'm requesting you is to go yet to another level, and that other level is asking your friends to do the same thing. Loy, how encourage the folks, because many of us don't know anything about the Supreme Court. We don't know anything about what you're dealing with. It's unfamiliar territory, and it's easy for us to kind of shy back a little bit and not take that extra step and invite 5 more people to the recording of this call. What would you say to those folks, Loy?
I think you doing that would be absolutely incredible for the justices. Right now, they need our love and support. They need to know we care and that we support them in their decision, that they're not alone, that we've got their backs. And so if we get an outpouring of letters, physical letters to the Supreme Court that are positive and friendly and encouraging, thanking them that it's made it this far, and tell them we're praying for their safety of their families, their children, and safety for their decisions, and that they will honor the Constitution and uphold the Constitution with their vote as this moves forward. I think that'd be absolutely tremendous. We want letters where they want to open them up and receive notes of encouragement. It's not a protest. It's like showing them we care and we're willing to let them know we care and that we are concerned about their health and safety and their families' security. And it would be absolutely phenomenal. I think it would just humble them and bring tears to their eyes and just encourage them to do what I think they're going to do. But they need to hear from we, the people, that we are aware of this and we support them.
I'm going to bring one of the guests on the call. She has some questions for you directly. But before I do that, I wanted to suggest that when you start receiving all of these copies of the letters, because we've asked the audience to send one to the Supreme Court and the other one to you.
Absolutely. These are historical documents. These are precious. The envelopes, the stamps, the stamp from the postmark, everything about it is precious and historical. So absolutely, you're right.
All right, Key West Jess, go ahead.
Loy, it's an honor. But you spoke to a friend of mine recently, Kevin, and you requested an email from us, and it's there. It's just an honor to meet you. I've had to learn how to squeeze summarizing the case into just as fast as I could get it out to somebody. And one of the things I will say that I feel like we haven't really touched on here is the immunity side of it. And we could be setting precedent for every state going forward that they can't get away with this.
Well, this would be retroactive.
Yeah. And then also there's another case that got scheduled on the same conference day as you. And that's the Morris case, Morris versus LaRose. And that has to do with the machines. So it's like, between these two cases, we could really clean up our country.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Fantastic. Thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Key West Jess.
It's an honor to meet you guys. Really, it really is.
We have some more questions. One of them would it be helpful for this audience to write to Paxton and Senator Cruz for them to file amicus briefs?
Yes, absolutely. As a matter of fact, that would be wonderful. A former member of Congress, I think, is going to reach out to some of these people, but that would be terrific. Absolutely.
Okay. And then another question is, why would the Solicitor General waive the rights? Do you have any theories of why that was done?
Well, I'm going to be optimistic and say that she read the petition, she read the complaint, and she saw that this was about the Constitution, and she's taken an oath to uphold and defend it, and it's not a partisan thing. I want to say that the spirit and her conscience got the best of her, and she knew that this needed to be moved forward. And even though it was such a delayed response, I'm just hoping that she's feeling it and that she's going to work towards this, because she knows it's not about partisan politics, but it's about the Constitution that she swore to uphold.
So another question that we have, or maybe we would like you to clarify, if you don't have to answer this, but we think that we believe you and your brother have spent a substantial amount of your net worth. The numbers speculate between 600,000 and 2 million. If you're comfortable, could you let us know? It doesn't matter.
Sure. It's been more of a loss in our business to do this more than an expense, because we haven't hired any legal teams to do this. And so we've kind of had some dramatic losses since we started doing this. So, but we've had attorneys look at this and say that with the 3 cases that they believe it's more like closer to $2 million it would have cost in legal fees if we'd had attorneys do it. And what our actual financial losses have been, we couldn't really say what that was, but it's substantial. And but we're surviving, we're eating, we're not starving to death. And we just feel like it was the greatest opportunity we ever had, regardless of the cost.
Could you explain the difference between an amicus brief and a letter? Do you?
Well, I think it's sort of the same thing. I'm not sure exactly. I should ask my brother about that. But I think an amicus brief is a more formal approach to a letter. I think an amicus brief that the former congressman was talking about would be similar to a petition almost in its format, maybe bound and letters and signatures and stating who they were and the support, the friends of the court, but it's always friendly. It's always friendly to the court. It's not a protesting a decision, anything like that. It's actually just more friendly and explaining how you feel about what you want the outcome to be in this situation. So I think the letters are in a way an amicus brief, but it's, letters from the heart. They might be more powerful than members of Congress signing an amicus brief, but both of them together would be incredible.
One of those things that you just cannot make this up is the fact that you guys are trumpet players.
Yeah.
And of notable fame, Rose Bowl, I believe, Johnny Carson show, the little at the end, the Brunson. So can you speak a little bit about that and just tie it into, this? We feel this is like a trumpet from God.
Well, okay, so we have a fourth brother and he runs the studio and he's been practicing and we haven't. And he says he's playing better than he ever has in his life. And he feels driven to practice, like we're going to have to play. It's like, maybe that'll happen. So he's the music director, I guess, at this point. But yeah, we started, I remember him, my youngest brother, when he was like 8 or 9 years old, and the next brother to me, it was like before they go to school, they would go up into the upstairs and they would get into a closet and practice, because that's where they had to practice to keep peace in the whole house, right? And so I remember walking up there one time. We didn't have heat in the upstairs. This was a long time ago. We didn't have heat in the upstairs. It was like 20 degrees outside. And I opened the door and they're practicing. They look up at me. I can't even see them because this big wall of fog comes out, the steam coming from the heat of their practicing with their trumpets. And it's like, those guys were so dedicated. They were homeschooled and my parents made them believe that they could do anything they want if they worked hard, worked their guts out. So they decided they wanted to be the world's greatest trumpet players. And I remember when we did the rehearsal with the Tonight Show band and Doc Severinsen came over to Roland and he said to him, he says, "You just played one note higher than anything I've ever recorded." And then if you go to YouTube, you can do a search for Brunson Brothers history, and it'll show you a lot of clips, the history. You probably saw that, and you'll see Roland give a quadruple tongue demonstration and a trumpet lesson to Regis Philbin. So it's my brothers. They are so just powerful people, positive people, and so dedicated and such strong work ethics and so creative and prayerful. And so it's a miracle, but no wonder that they were able to pull this off, put us where we're at now.
Because after we end this, we're all going to feel really good. But as Raj said, we want to write one letter and make a copy. The original will go to the Supreme Court. The copy, it is so important that you do this. Send it to Loy and Rowland. That is key, so that we have proof of what we have sent to the Supreme Court, so that if the mailman or the post office or whatever decides any shenanigans, CNN starts reporting it was only 5 letters that the Supreme Court got, Loy and Rowland have the proof of what this movement is doing. So number 1, that. Number 2, remember to personalize this letter when you send it to the Supreme Court. The best thing would be that you handwrite it. You can take the form that is provided in the Substack and then put a PS. Put a PS saying, "Merry Christmas. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for taking on Roe versus Wade. We stand by you. Thank you, all the justices." So those are ideas of the postscript where they can see your handwritten notes. Third is, if you will, include $1 into the letter that you're sending to the Brunson brothers. That would mean so much. It would be so symbolic. And then again, this is not only for the United States. A lot of you on this call have family, friends all over the globe. If this country falls, we will not be light for the world. We go, the rest of the planet goes. So letters from Australia, from China, from Brazil, from Venezuela, all of these captured countries, please get the word out. Okay, let me reiterate the Brunson Brothers website. It is right now in the chat. It's the last. Theresa Johnson has posted it. Their website is 7discoveries. 7discoveries. There's a misspelling there. 7discoveries.com.
Let me put a question in here as well. Could you restate again the potential benefit of having hundreds of thousands of people write letters, and how that might actually foster an expectation that this could go through peacefully, and we're not going to go, people aren't going to do dumb things. People will go through this as adults peacefully. Could you?
Okay, I think we underestimate how much the justices want to do the right thing on this. Remember, they're threatened. They have the threats that the court, that the justices have received are pretty severe, and they know this. And now is the chance for the Supreme Court to flex their power. Look at what they could not do. Look at what the Congress and the president could not do with Roe versus Wade. They couldn't overturn the justices, could they? They couldn't change a decision from the U.S. Supreme Court, could they? And so all these attacks and threats, now the Supreme Court has a constitutional duty to protect themselves and to protect the Constitution. So, and I think the January 6th date is a muscle flex. It's like, that's a sign of confidence from the court to set it for January 6th. And so I think that we are going to see the power of the Supreme Court. And I think the justices know the power they have, that it trumps all. Now, there's a special reason I think that the court is so powerful, because it's the right to petition the court for redress of grievances, because the Supreme Court represents all of us in our petition for redress of grievances. And those letters, in a way, are a friendly petition, and letting them know we back their power, we back their decision. And so
So well said.
I think we're going to be surprised, and that January 6th, I think that January 6th date is a message to you listeners, to us as Americans, to us as citizens of the United States of America. That's a signal to us, I believe, that they are telling us that they've got it, they've got our backs, and they have the power. They have the power to remove these people and to strip immunity, so that now we won't have any representatives that won't be liable for their unconstitutional actions. You know, there are perjury laws in California that use the wording that exclude politicians. In other words, you can commit perjury if it's the oath of office, having to do with your oath of office, and they're excluded. This would strip that away. I think the Supreme Court justices are thrilled with this, and I think they were seeing the power of this before they even docketed it. And that's why they were working with us, asking us to get it to them soon, to include other stuff in the petition. So it's almost like saying they're being attacked, and now they have the tools to defend themselves quickly and swiftly. Are they going to defend themselves? Well, how could they not? How could they not? So we're hopeful, and we just need to let them know that we're on our side, and then pray that God gives them the power and the tools to make this happen. We feel like we're a small part of this, of something divine happening, and that we're playing our part, and you're playing your parts, and everyone has been prepared to play their parts up to this point and beyond. And everyone, it's a call to action what you're doing, and people are going to feel it. They're going to connect with it. And everyone that is supposed to participate in this divine intervention, is what I would call it, they're going to feel it. They're going to come, and they're going to fulfill what their purpose is, to preserve this Constitution and to preserve this republic. It's to preserve the Supreme Court, to preserve our families. And I think it's going to happen. Do your part in this production and watch it happen. The Congress, as you know, identified, what's the word? They actually classified the first 10 amendments and identified the first 10 amendments as further declaratory and restrictive clauses to the 7 articles of the Constitution. And so the 9th Amendment, that I say is the voice of God, the interpretation clause, it goes like this. It's just one sentence. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. No misconstruing the document, the Constitution, in favor of politicians and the federal government at the expense of the unalienable rights of the people. Our rights existed before the Constitution was framed. Our rights existed before the Declaration of Independence was signed. We're all equal in that we have equal rights under the law. That's what that means. And they are God-given and they are unalienable. And there's no power on the face of the earth that can take them from us. No police force, no state force, no government entity. No matter how powerful they are, they cannot take those rights from anyone on this planet. They can only violate them, and they will be held accountable for doing that. And any interpretation, like I said, that does not do that, any interpretation of the Constitution, no matter how clear it might seem, is a misinterpretation and unconstitutional if it's used in a way to disparage or deprive us of our God-given rights.
Wow. My friends, good night. Loy, thank you very, very, very much.
This Defend Our Union interview of Loy Brunson was recorded on December 10th, 2022.